Imagine a person who was always the natural. School was easy, and the answers came fast. They wore the label of the smart kid like a badge of honor. But then, something shifted. The world got more complex, the challenges got heavier, and suddenly, they stopped moving forward. They didn't lose their intelligence. They lost their momentum. You might recognize this feeling. It's the moment you realize that being smart has become a cage. You stop taking risks because you're afraid of looking like you don't know what you're doing. You see others who maybe struggled more in the beginning, starting to pass you by while you stay exactly where you are. This happens because of a specific psychological barrier called a fixed mindset. In this state, you believe your intelligence and talents are carved in stone. You have what you have, and every situation is a high-stakes test to prove you still have it. If you fail, it doesn't just mean you made a mistake, it means you aren't smart anymore. To get moving again, we have to look at the alternative, a growth mindset. To put it simply, a growth mindset is the fundamental belief that your abilities aren't fixed. It's the understanding that your brain is like a muscle. It gets stronger and more capable specifically because of effort, strategy, and even failure. When smart people stop growing, it's usually because they've started valuing being smart more than getting smarter. They've fallen in love with the result rather than the process. They treat their brain like a finished statue to be protected, rather than a garden that needs constant tending to stay alive and productive. Think about how you handle a challenge that feels just a little too hard. If you find yourself making excuses to avoid it, you're likely trying to protect an image. You're worried that if you struggle, people will realize you were never that gifted to begin with. This fear of being exposed is the primary engine of stagnation. Real growth requires you to trade in your expert status for the role of a perpetual beginner. It means accepting that frustration isn't a sign that you've reached your limit. In fact, frustration is the biological signal that you are actually learning. It is the friction required to create new neural pathways in your mind. The transition starts with how you talk to yourself about difficulty. Instead of saying, "I'm not good at this," you add one tiny, powerful word to the end of the sentence. Yet. I'm not good at this. Yet. I haven't figured this out. Yet. This one word acknowledges your current state while leaving the door wide open for the future. Notice what happens when you make this shift. Effort stops being a sign of weakness and starts being the secret ingredient that makes you smarter. You begin to seek out feedback, even the critical kind, because you realize that other people's perspectives are just data points to help you calibrate your next move. You start to view the success of others differently, too. Instead of feeling threatened or jealous when someone else excels, you start to look for their strategy. You ask, what did they do that I can learn from? Other people's growth becomes a roadmap for your own, rather than a critique of your worth. This isn't about being optimistic or positive. It's about being accurate. Modern neuroscience shows us that the brain remains plastic throughout our entire lives. We are literally built to change. Stopping your growth is actually an unnatural act. It requires a massive amount of energy to keep yourself static and safe. Imagine the relief of no longer having to be the smartest person in the room. When you embrace a growth mindset, you are free to be the person who asks the dumb questions that everyone else is too afraid to voice. You become the person who is most likely to solve the problem because you're the only one willing to try 3 wrong ways first. This shift changes your identity from someone who is something to someone who does things. You aren't a writer. You are someone who writes and gets better at it. You aren't a leader. You are someone who practices leadership daily. This removes the pressure of perfection and replaces it with the thrill of progress. Tomorrow, look for a small area where you've been playing it safe. It doesn't have to be a life-altering risk. It could be as simple as speaking up in a meeting where you don't have all the answers, or trying a new skill where you know you'll be a clumsy beginner for a while. Pay attention to the internal resistance you feel. That's your old mindset trying to protect your ego. Acknowledge it, and then lean into the discomfort anyway. Every time you choose the challenge over the comfort, you are rewiring your brain to value growth over status. You are reclaiming your momentum. High intelligence is a wonderful engine, but a growth mindset is the fuel that keeps it running. Without it, even the most powerful engine eventually runs dry. With it, there is no ceiling to what you can understand or achieve. The goal isn't to arrive at a destination of smartness, but to stay on the path of becoming. As you move forward, remember that the most successful people aren't the ones who never fail. They are the ones who have decided that failure is just a specific type of information. They have traded the brittle safety of being gifted for the unstoppable power of being a learner. And that choice is available to you right now.